Lecture 20, Part 1 of the Varieties of Religious Experience. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Varieties of Religious Experience by William James. Lecture 20, Part 1. Conclusions. The material of our study of human nature is now spread before us, and in this parting hour, set free from the duty of description, we can draw our theoretical and practical conclusions. In my first lecture, defending the empirical method, I foretold that whatever conclusions we might come to could be reached by spiritual judgments only, applications of the significance for life of religion, taken on the whole. Our conclusions cannot be as sharp as dogmatic conclusions would be, but I will formulate them, when the time comes, as sharply as I can. Summing up in the broadest possible way the characteristics of the religious life as we have found them, it includes the following beliefs. 1. That the visible world is part of a more spiritual universe from which it draws its chief significance. 2. That union or harmonious relation with that higher universe is our true end. 3. That prayer or inner communion with the spirit thereof, be that spirit God or law, is a process wherein work is really done, and spiritual energy flows in and produces effects, psychological or material, within the phenomenal world. Religion includes also the following psychological characteristics. 4. A new zest which adds itself like a gift to life, and takes the form either of lyrical enchantment or of appeal to earnestness and heroism. 5. An assurance of safety and a temper of peace, and, in relation to others, a preponderance of loving affections. In illustrating these characteristics by documents, we have been literally bathed in sentiment. In rereading my manuscript, I am almost appalled at the amount of emotionality which I find in it. After so much of this, we can afford to be drier and less sympathetic in the rest of the work that lies before us. The sentimentality of my documents is a consequence of the fact that I sought them among the extravagances of the subject. If any of you are enemies of what our ancestors used to brand as enthusiasm, and are, nevertheless, still listening to me now, you have probably felt my selection to have been sometimes almost perverse, and have wished I might have stuck to soberer examples. I reply that I took these extremer examples as yielding the profounder information. To learn the secrets of any science, we go to expert specialists, even though they may be eccentric persons, and not too commonplace pupils. We combine what they tell us with the rest of our wisdom, and form our final judgment independently. Even so with religion. We who have pursued such radical expressions of it may now be sure that we know its secrets as authentically as anyone can know them who learns them from another, and we have next to answer, each of us for himself, the practical question: what are the dangers in this element of life, and in what proportion may it need to be restrained by other elements to give the proper balance? But this question suggests another one, which I will answer immediately and get it out of the way, for it has more than once already vexed us. Ought it to be assumed that in all men the mixture of religion with other elements should be identical? Ought it, indeed, to be assumed that the lives of all men should show identical religious elements? In other words, is the existence of so many religious types and sects and creeds regrettable? To these questions I answer no emphatically. And my reason is that I do not see how it is possible that creatures in such different positions and with such different powers as human individuals are, should have exactly the same functions and the same duties. No two of us have identical difficulties, nor should we be expected to work out identical solutions. Each, from his peculiar angle of observation, takes in a certain sphere of fact and trouble, which each must deal with in a unique manner. One of us must soften himself, another must harden himself. One must yield a point, another must stand firm, in order the better to defend the position assigned him. If an Emerson were forced to be a Wesley, or a Moody forced to be a Whitman, the total human consciousness of the divine would suffer. The divine can mean no single quality, it must mean a group of qualities, by being champions of which, in alternation, different men may all find worthy missions. Each attitude being a syllable in human nature's total message, it takes the whole of us to spell the meaning out completely. So a God of battles must be allowed to be the God for one kind of person, a God of peace and heaven and home the God for another. We must frankly recognize the fact that we live in partial systems, and that parts are not interchangeable in the spiritual life. If we are peevish and jealous, destruction of the self must be an element of our religion. Why need it be one if we are good and sympathetic from the outset? If we are sick souls, we require a religion of deliverance. But why think so much of deliverance if we are healthy-minded? Footnote. From this point of view, the contrasts between the healthy and the morbid mind, and between the once-born and the twice-born types, of which I spoke in earlier lectures, cease to be the radical antagonisms which many think them. The twice-born look down upon the rectilinear consciousness of life of the once-born as being mere morality and not properly religion. An Orthodox minister is reported to have said, quote, "Dr. Channing is excluded from the highest form of religious life by the extraordinary rectitude of his character." Close quote. It is indeed true that the outlook upon life of the twice-born, holding as it does more of the element of evil in solution, is the wider and completer. The heroic or solemn way in which life comes to them is a higher synthesis into which healthy-mindedness and morbidness both enter and combine. Evil is not evaded, but sublated in the higher religious cheer of these persons. But the final consciousness which each type reaches of union with the divine has the same practical significance for the individual, and individuals may well be allowed to get to it by the channels which lie most open to their several temperaments. In the cases which were quoted in Lecture 4 of the mind-cure form of healthy-mindedness, we found abundant examples of regenerative process. The severity of the crisis in this process is a matter of degree. How long one shall continue to drink the consciousness of evil, and when one shall begin to short-circuit and get rid of it, are also matters of amount and degree, so that in many instances it is quite arbitrary whether we class the individual as a once-born or a twice-born subject. End footnote. Unquestionably, some men have the completer experience and the higher vocation, here just as in the social world. But for each man to stay in his own experience, whatever it be, and for others to tolerate him there, is surely best. But, you may now ask, would not this one-sidedness be cured if we should all espouse the science of religions as our own religion? In answering this question, I must open again the general relations of the theoretic to the active life. Knowledge about a thing is not the thing itself. You remember what Al-Ghazali told us in the lecture on mysticism, that to understand the causes of drunkenness, as a physician understands them, is not to be drunk. A science might come to understand everything about the causes and elements of religion, and might even decide which elements were qualified, by their general harmony with other branches of knowledge, to be considered true, and yet the best man at this science might be the man who found it hardest to be personally devout. Tout savions, c'est tout pardonner. The name Renan would doubtless occur to many persons as an example of the way in which breadth of knowledge may make one only a dilettante in possibilities, and blunt the acuteness of one's living faith. If religion be a function by which